Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here.
Welcome to the Love Pod, everyone. I'm your host, Nathaniel. I'm super thrilled to have a special guest today, Susan Bloom, who is a lifelong horsewoman, a master equine gestaltist, and equine assisted play shop facilitator. And you've trained for 4 years as in the equine gestalt coaching method. You know, this work that you've done with horses and are doing with horses is so important, and I know it's led to a lot of healing and opening up pathways for people. Susan, you've also designed interactive horse guided experiences, which is really amazing, and really fostered environment that thrives in building leadership, team building, and mindfulness. And you're also a breast cancer survivor, and you have a history in a background in communications and bringing the storytelling, all these elements together. It sounds really beautiful. So I'd love to just introduce you to our show and ask you to let our listeners know more about who you are and why do you do what you do.
Thank you, Nathaniel, and thank you for having me. Um, I was raised as the daughter of the only doctor in a small town in Western Kansas.
Okay.
And then I was a caregiver for my husband for 5.5 years. And at the last of that was when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it really brought it into my heart to help other people who were in that caregiving situation, to help doctors, veterinarians avoid burnout,
Hmm.
because it seems like the really good ones are the ones that get burned out.
Hmm.
And I mean, my dad was a doctor for 37 years. He was forced into retirement by head injury.
Okay.
At 65, he was going to practice another 5 years. But um, yeah. And so I've seen a lot
Hmm.
because we traveled with my husband. We traveled over 57,000 miles
Okay.
by car to see specialists here and there.
Wow.
Like I said, I was in Western Kansas. We went to Denver. We started in Denver. Then we went to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And one of the doctors he saw there actually suggested a doctorate in Kansas City at KU Med Center, which was half the distance of Rochester. So it was
Hmm.
5 hours compared to 10.
Okay. Okay.
And we also went down to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, 3 months in a row. So 3 trips down there in 3 months, and usually trips to Kansas City between them, which was fun, chaotic.
So you've been on the road a lot. And
Mhm.
and was this while you were working with horses, or did the horses come later, Susan?
Well, I've always had horses. So yes,
Okay.
I had horses at the time. And that was 5.5 years. In the last 2.5 of that, I was in the first equine gestalt training that I took.
Okay.
So I was just starting. Um, and I was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. I had just taken my final exam, still had some things to do to become certified. And my mentor said, take your time.
Hmm.
So I did. And then my husband actually died the day after my last chemo treatment. So
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
then
Condolences.
it was, and then I was, I kind of took a step back, finished up treatment, and was ready to really get rolling in 2020. And of course, everything shut down in
Hmm.
2020.
Hmm.
So in 2023 was when I actually moved, but I sold the land back in Western Kansas in the fall of 2022 and moved to, I'm about an hour from Kansas City,
Okay.
to a more populated area where people didn't have to travel a day or longer
Hmm.
to get to me. Yeah.
Hmm. And now where you are, do you have like a center where people come and work with the horses? And on that note, can you explain more about what equine gestalt therapy is so our listeners know?
Sure. I bought a 100-acre ranch with a house that I can host small retreats. Right now, I could host up to 6 people. And so Equine Gestalt is a German word that kind of translates into flowing back to form. So as a Gestaltist, I would believe that you have your answers
Mm.
inside you,
Yeah.
and I would help you find those. The horses and I would help you find those.
Mm.
One of the examples I use, and this is a piece that I did when I was trying to decide if I wanted to move to Western Kansas, stay in Western Kansas where there aren't many people, and it would be a great break for people to get away.
Hmm.
However, like I said, I mean, we're 4 hours from Denver and was 5 hours from KU Med Center in Kansas City. So, and there's no airports, of course.
Mm.
And the piece of work was around whether I wanted to move, really wanted to jump in and move. I have my oldest son and my grandkids happen to be back in Western Kansas.
Oh, okay. That's a big decision to make. And also, I would imagine moving with horses is not when people think of moving, they think of packing a bunch of boxes and or hiring people to pack boxes. But when you're moving your other family members, that's a big trip, I would imagine.
I actually hired someone to move the horses
Okay.
because they could do it all in
Hmm.
one fell swoop. Um, so what we do, it's called polarity when you're trying to make a decision like that. And you put something, usually a pole, in the middle of the arena. And Ruby was the horse in there with me. And you talk to, on the side that's the Western Kansas side, I would talk to the part of me that wanted to move. And on the side that was Eastern Kansas side, I would talk to the part of me that
Hmm.
wanted to stay, convince them or tell them the pros and cons and whatnot. And at one point in that experience, I could feel Ruby just right back here on my hip, as if she was going to push me across to the Eastern Kansas side.
Hmm.
Because the horses, they know if, sometimes you think you know what you're saying
Hmm.
is true when really it's not.
Yeah.
So they do know that. And she knew, and she was like, get over there, get out of there.
Hmm.
It did still take me a little time to get up the courage to sell that land and
Hmm.
actually move, because I wanted to do it without having to sell the land, and there was going to be no way.
I am curious, talking about the knowing of horses, and I feel like, I've had some direct experiences with the intelligence of animals, the especially the emotional intelligence of animals and their sensitivity. And we also live in a materialistic dogmatic world where science says, animals don't have consciousness and humans are the only ones. And I'm wondering, like, what has been the greatest gift that horses have brought to you in terms of that? It sounds like a remembrance there. Like there's gifts, there's communication, there's relationships. What stands out to you most with your journey with horses?
Ooh, when I was a kid, I didn't I didn't realize they were actively healing.
Hmm.
What I knew was whenever I felt bad, I would go across the road and be with them,
Hmm.
not knowing. It wasn't until I took this program that I knew that. And then one of the mares that I still have, I used to have a quarter horse racing breeding business, and I wanted to breed her, so I had her inside to keep lights on her to try to be able to breed her earlier. And I would clean the stall and put the muck bucket in there, and she would stand herself right over the top of the muck bucket to get my attention. And this was before the Equine Gestalt, and what I realized was that she was trying to heal me,
Hmm.
I was that probably was in the middle at the start of my husband's caregiving.
Hmm.
So she was just trying her darndest to help me get through that,
Hmm.
as she did from then on. One night, um, I had been in Arizona for a training and had driven back, and it was late, and I went out, actually hit a deer just a few miles from town, and then which didn't hurt my vehicle much, and we don't know what happened to the deer, but um, I went out to see the horses, and she came up to me and just loved on me. Another time, I was I'd been in Montana. Yeah, no, we'd been in Kansas City for an early morning procedure. And it had been a really tough trip home. And the doctor had told me something that I thought he should have told my husband,
Hmm.
not that I should have to tell my husband.
Hmm.
And I went out to feed kind of late, and it was August, so I went and checked the water. And the other three mares came over and kind of surrounded me, while the one who I was talking about earlier checked to make sure there wasn't any feed left. Then she came over and dismissed me, or dismissed the other three, and she put her throat right up here to my throat,
Hmm.
as if to say, you have something to say.
Hmm.
And I looked at her, I said, I know that, sassy. When I figure out how to do it, I will.
Hmm.
So, and I was, it had been a rough trip home, partly because I was thinking about all that stuff the doctor had said, and my husband was pretty out of it that particular trip, and it had just been a really long day.
Hmm. So that deep intuitive relationship that you've developed with your horses, and now you help people um, to embark in similar ways to work with horses. What would you say has been the most important part of that development? Because to a lot of folks listening, maybe like the concept of hearing animals or having that communication, they might see that as impossible. And my background's in indigenous wellness too, so I've been around a lot of like medicine people who, have that kind of rapport with plants and that ability
Mhm.
to communicate. But what to you stands out in terms of the ability to develop that, or for people who want to have more connection and to the sensitivity that those kind of relationships can bring.
You, you just have to get into your body and out of your
Hmm.
head.
Ah.
Um, and and I don't say that I talk to them like some animal communicators do. It's more of a sense of what it, I guess it's more of a feeling for both of us, for the horses and for me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a deep level of listening that you have to develop, and it's as simple as what you said sounds, is very profound. I feel like a big part of the shift to becoming more present in life and to listening to all those signals and the ones who want to help, whether it's a horse or it comes down to getting out of the head and coming into the body. And I feel like our, especially Western society, has tried its darndest to do the opposite. We have all kinds of pills, or you can numb ourselves with with screens and all kinds of things to not feel the body. And here, I think what you're saying is really, really important. We've had some other guests talk about this the importance of just feeling. What what is your, now that you're working with horses in this more expansive way, what is your what's your mission, and how are you expanding your work, Susan?
My mission would be to, like I said, help doctors,
Yes.
veterinarians who are in high stress, at high stress levels. Here in the US, the medical system, the insurance system kind of runs the medical system.
Hmm.
It's hard to get in to see specialists or even sometimes primary care doctors. And it seems like it takes forever, and then your insurance might cover it and might not, and it's terribly expensive. As
Mm.
a small business owner, I don't have someone who pays for my insurance. I pay
Hmm.
for it.
Hmm.
And recently I had to take a higher out-of-pocket expense because I simply could not afford the cost of the lower
Hmm. Hmm.
out-of-pocket. And so much in medicine is dictated by the time that the money, the income. Your doctor may have 20 minutes to spend with you. And is
Hmm.
that really enough? I had
Right.
I had an oncologist who came in one day and apologized profusely for being late. And I looked at him and I said, "Look, if you had to spend extra time with a patient before me, I totally understand. And I understand because I would hope that you would turn around, and if you need to spend extra time with me, you will."
Hmm.
And it's sad that the hospital organizations, the practices, are so driven by money and income that patient care is dwindling. So one of the things that I like to say is I'd like to see, it only takes a few seconds to see the doctors give just a little part of themselves to make them human to the patients.
Hmm.
For instance, my husband had a pulmonologist who one day I think I said something about our 14-year-old son who had changed his shampoo, and it set off my husband's asthma from the basement. And he just smiled and he said, "Yeah," he said, "I have a 13-year-old." He said, "I don't know what it is about prepubescent boys and acts." And just that tiny phrase made him more human to me.
Yeah.
And he listened. He listened to my husband. He listened to me. He would answer our questions as well as he could. Or there was my husband's surgeon who I had emailed the pulmonologist and a surgeon that my husband saw regularly right after I was diagnosed with breast cancer to see, what they might recommend if it was their wife or daughter. And they both got back to me within 30 minutes. And the next time we were in Kansas City for a procedure, that the surgeon came out to talk to me, and the first words out of his mouth were, "So breast cancer." I mean, it
Hmm.
was about me.
Hmm.
Uh, Obviously, if the procedure wouldn't have went well, it would have been about that, but it was fairly routine. Um, and we talked about that before we did my husband, and he
Hmm.
would occasionally give me a hug or ask
Hmm.
about me. And it's that humanizing of them, because I like to think that I don't put them up on a pedestal,
Hmm. Hmm.
because my dad was a doctor and I grew up with medical students coming in and out and various things, and I do it too.
Hmm.
So when they can just give us a little bit of when they're human.
Hmm. Hmm.
And honestly, the veterinary system isn't that much better right now.
Hmm.
I've had cats have to go in. Um, one was on a Saturday and he actually had to be put down. And then just Friday, I had a cat who was limping and I took him to the vet. And it probably took me twice as long to drive there with the cat as I actually got to see the vet.
Hmm.
So they're under those same constraints too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what, here in Canada as well, it's very evident that it is a sick care system. It's not really a health care system, and there is profits being made off the illness of people. I was just talking to my sister. I don't know how true it is, but she was talking about our national GDP, and like one of the highest parts of the GDP is healthcare. And I said, well, but that's not any gross domestic product. That's taking care of people who are sick. And she said, I know. And I said, well, that is very strange. And we've talked to some other like inspiring people. One woman, Sarah McCrum, wrote a book on From the Consciousness of Money, and she's talked about like helping to develop systems that are based on wellness, not illness. And I really
Mhm.
feel like there needs to be a paradigm shift in this domain, because I've heard other systems where, yeah, and I think this is probably smaller community based, but the doctor gets paid based on no illness. If the community is thriving and well, then the doctor gets paid well, and it's not based on how many patients you encounter. And there certainly is a lot of problems here, and I think in different ways in Canada, because it's a socialized healthcare system. But you could go in with something like a pretty bad break or some kind of illness that's very uncomfortable. You could be waiting in the waiting room for like our brother and his sister were there for like 14 hours last time they went, just for something pretty basic. And it's not like there's a triage, like a nurse going around and serving anyone. So I feel like it is very, like you said, inhuman. A lot of these institutions, and I feel like there's some really important lessons that you've shared about with horses. Imagine if our healers, the ones who apparently take these oaths to do no harm and whatnot, approached life like horses. And I've had also cats and things. I've had experiences where I felt they were healing us and healing myself, and I had also this interesting experience. I didn't think twice about it. But my sister's cat had developed diabetes pretty. It was pretty bad. It had gotten to a point where Mr. Mittens, he liked eating peas, and he always had a chair by my sister, and he'd get a lot of the table food, and he got a little too heavy, and eventually got diabetes to a point where my sister had moved out, and my parents were having to inject him with insulin every day, and he lost the back use of his legs. And I was visiting from college one Christmas, and I just felt so much compassion for him. And I was just listening to my body, to be honest. Like it wasn't a thought like, oh, I'm going to do anything. It wasn't even me thinking. I just wanted to just give him love, and I just put my hands on his legs, and I felt like this pulsation coming through my hands, and he like kind of almost like he was a little jolt. I could tell he could feel it too. And we just stayed there for a while and just was feeling this and just feeling love for him. And then he got his top up, I guess, and he kind of just, he shrugged it off and walked away. And I didn't think twice about it, but when I returned in the summer, he was totally off his insulin. He was jumping again. He had restored back use of his legs. And to me, it's not like I'm special. I feel like we have these innate healing gifts as people when we are more in tune with our bodies. So in part of your work with horses, have what are some of the transformations that you've seen having people work with horses and do some of this inner work of looking at inner conflicts and doing some of that healing? What have been some profound things you've seen?
One of the best was um, a woman who she and her husband had adopted two children from Africa. And the older one, a little girl, had reactive attachment disorder. And it had gotten to the point where they were in fear for their animals and for their own safety, and the little boy who was younger, his safety. And so they placed her with an organization that knew how to take care of that. And the experience that was set up for her was so she would get, when she was at home, she would be sick, just violently sick. And when she went, like I think they went to her parents in South Carolina for Thanksgiving, and she was fine there. She came home, she got sick again. She went to see her brother someplace. There were just these things in her body that were changing when she was home. And so there were flower boxes set up in a rectangle or a square. I don't remember which. And that was her house. The rest of the round pen, QT was the horse she was working with. The rest of the round pen was not home. And as she talked through the being at home, you could see her body just close up. And when she'd step over the flower box and out of the house, she'd open up, and she's talking to herself, and she does that several times. And she's in the house, and QT went over and he picked up the flower box with his teeth, pulled it out like a door, as if to say, get out of that house. Now, they had been looking for a ranch, and within 2 months, they had a contract on a ranch and 2 offers over asking on their house. It shifted the energy that much.
Wow. Profound.
And it was very profound.
That's amazing we talk a lot on the show about just the miraculous nature of life and how it's easy to kind of just bypass it because we are in these routines in our days. As we, especially after we get to a certain age, we start taking on beliefs about ourselves and about life, and we stop maybe listening to the subtler clues and witnessing the wonder of life. But I feel like there's a reason why so many small children, especially little girls, are so drawn to horses. And there's something special with respect to the relationship that we share as a species. Could you talk a little bit about that from your perspective?
Well, obviously, I was one of those little girls, and blessed to have a grandfather who farmed not far from me and had horses. He gave me a pony when I was, I don't know, 5.
Wow.
I cannot remember a time when there wasn't a horse in my life. Some of my first memories, it was with my aunt who was rodeoing in college at the time, but riding with her at a rodeo. So I'm definitely one of those little girls, and I was blessed to be able to carry it through to adulthood. And, I'm so grateful for that. And I got off a tangent and forgot what your true question was.
Well, no, I think you definitely answered it. I think there's a magic quality to our relationship with horses, and we wouldn't be where we are in terms of our advancement as a species without horses. We still call it horsepower, in terms of the engines and things that we create. I think it's a really special relationship that reminds us of that magic. And I've had the opportunity to ride a few horses. We've never had horses, but my sister, she spent a lot of time shoveling poop to be around them. And she worked at different ranches and stuff. And she was a horse guide and things. And she always had this really deep relationship with horses. And the few times that I had the opportunity to ride a horse, I remember there was this moment of like syncing up and like where, there was this relationship that occurred where it's like almost like you become connected and know like in terms of where the direction is, and otherwise the horse has its own mind. So there's like an intentionality, and I feel like um, what I was asking about was like well, maybe a better way of asking it is like what do horses remind us as a species about the importance of these kinds of relationships?
To this day, if I get in a hurry, they remind me to come back
Mm,
to the present moment, whether that be a foot on my foot or, you know, misbehaving on the lead line or whatever it is.
mm,
They have a way to bring you back to that present moment.
mm,
And they also, and I think there's been a study on this, we're all energy, everything's energy,
mm,
and they can raise our vibration. They want us to be where they are.
mm,
And that's one of the things they do is raise our vibration. Or like when I said the mare put her throat right up here, she was working on my throat chakra.
yeah.
Um, and she often would work on my root chakra. She would back up to me, and sometimes I had to tell her she was close enough. um, uh, and they do. They want to heal us.
Mm, mm, mm.
That's their gift that they want to give to us.
Yeah, I mean, for such a powerful animal in a lot of ways, it their grace never escapes me. Like the gentleness that most horses exhibit, unless obviously there's situations, but I feel like for the most part, there's just this elegance about how they carry power, and I feel like that's a big teaching for humankind as well, since we obviously have power ourselves, especially collectively, and all the technological advancements and things that we're seeing in this modern age. I think that reminder of slowing down and being in the present is so important. In fact, it's what a lot of Indigenous elders that I've listened to have said. When the times speed up, it's so much more important to slow down and to listen. So there's a lot of wisdom in that. Do you feel like horses have like a larger message for humanity? Do they think collectively? We had a woman on who was talking who does spiritual beekeeping, and she also the bees helped her through some tremendous healing experiences in her life, and helped her to recover. She was supposed to pass several years ago, and her work with them has been remarkable. And she was talking about her ability to listen to the bees and then to convey some of their messages to humankind, because they are such an advanced higher dimensional species in a way. Do you feel like horses have a similar kind of energetics to them because they are like more of a herd animal, or do you feel like it's more one-on-one work?
Um,
That's kind of maybe a weird question.
no, and it's something I have not ever thought about. Um, Definitely, for instance, when I go out and feed in the mornings, I definitely need to be aware and not in a hurry,
Hmm.
because if I am not aware of where they are because of the way I feed them, accidents can happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, so much so I didn't do it this year because we had a kind of a mild winter, but the last two winters, I would literally call my son and have him on the phone while I was out feeding because it was slick and it was cold. And if
Mm,
something would have happened, I,
mm,
I mean, he couldn't have even gotten out. I said, something happens, you just call 911 because you can't get here in time. It's
mm,
too cold.
mm, mm.
Um, and fortunately, nothing like that ever happened. But when they're, because in the wintertime, I feed them all as a group
Okay.
and they're always jockeying for position.
Hmm.
Oh, that feeder might have more in it. So yeah, they always are. As a matter of fact, I had one run over me in December
Oh, wow.
because I was in a hurry and I wasn't paying attention.
Okay.
And another one chased her just right over me. So there's always that possibility.
Mm,
So whenever, I go out there, I need to be very present into what I'm doing and
mm,
what they're doing,
mm.
very mindful. And up here on the ranch, it is a great place to be mindful.
Yeah, for sure. That connection to the land is so important, and it's what probably fewer and fewer people really understand in a deep way in these times, since so many more people live, um, different lives. And even if they are living in the country, more people are probably connected to their devices and things, not necessarily getting out there and spending time with animals. So I feel like these reminders are really important through conversations to remember our brothers and sisters who teach us these deeper spiritual lessons, right? About whether it's paying attention and being mindful of where we're at, and also mindful of our own power and how we're approaching life. What is your higher vision for our world, Susan, with respect to, yeah, what would you like to see happen? You've mentioned like healthcare and some of the challenges you've seen. And I know it's really easy to focus in these times with like polarity and all this stuff, but you did mention like we are all energy, and I do believe that our consciousness is co-creative, and a big part of what we like to focus on is a higher vision for our world. I believe that we can create it. So what does that look like for you?
Okay, well, I don't want to get politically charged,
No need.
but peace, just,
Yes.
for everyone to be to communicate better.
Yeah.
That's I always I have always felt like relationship problems, the
Hmm.
bulk of them, whether it's, financial, it's communication between the people that cause relationship problems. And I guess that's kind of where I actually would focus my work with doctors and veterinarians and caregivers, to give caregivers a place where they can feel like they're not judged and like they're understood. Because I've traveled that road.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so important, and we can't underestimate the value of presence. Someone truly being there with you, in body, deep listening, like that can be a healing force. Just like you're saying with the horses, they remind you of that. I feel like, in the hustle and bustle of life, there's a lot of focus on future in the West, especially, and that reminder to just be with the one that is in front of you is such a powerful and yet easily bypassed uh,
Is
remedy, right? It's easy to just look past that and be like, yeah, I'll be present with you tomorrow. Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate your demeanor, and I can tell it's funny. I've had the opportunity to be around some different elders and things and different ceremonies, and oftentimes some of the ceremonies that I've gone through, like whether it's fasting on the land or doing sweat lodges, there's a lot of preparation work that can come, and sometimes coming from the city of Ottawa and then going into the country, it takes some time to go back down to the speed of the country. And I'll go out there. I'm like, okay, let's go get the rocks and let's go do the firewood and let's get everything. Let's go choose the right grandfather and grandmother stones and all this stuff. And on every occasion, it's just like they're kind of like the horses. They just remind me like just slow down. We're gonna do this. We're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna go do this. And it's all about doing everything intentionally. And I feel like that is such a because everyone. Well, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but it seems like there's this high focus on material productivity and success and all these things. And yet we've heard so many people who have achieved like phenomenal levels of wealth that most people can't even imagine. I mean, the difference between $1 million and $1 billion is like huge. And we have several people who are, you know, billionaires in our world, like many people. And I'll never forget Tony Robbins saying after interviewing like 50 of them for his book on Money Master the Game, like almost all of them except for maybe two were genuinely happy. And I feel like if we, not that there's anything wrong with having wealth, and I think, I would love to see everyone wealthy in our world and rejoicing in abundance. But when you're always chasing that next thing and you're not being present with what is and just being in that connectivity with who's in front of you, it does damage relationships because that communication is not just hearing someone and giving someone an answer. It really is about that presence and being there with your heart and being there with your open mind. And what do you think are the main in learning from all this from horses, Susan? What would you say to our guests are some ways that they can become more mindful, become more present in their days?
One of my favorite things is to go out at night and look at the stars.
Mm,
And again, I'm blessed because I live here where I can see them.
yeah.
And I kind of always have, even in the small town that I grew up in, you could see a lot of stars. To get out of your routine, whatever that takes,
Mm,
for self-care. One of the examples I use for self-care, when my husband was in the hospital in Kansas City, one of our sons was in college at KU in Lawrence, about 45 minutes away. And I would spend nights with him. So I'd get, I did not stay at the hospital unless we'd gotten there so late that I was just done driving.
yeah.
Because that did happen too. The doctors would say, you need to come now.
Mm,
And okay. But I would go back to his apartment. If he was working, I'd get some takeout and sit and watch a silly movie, sometimes with a glass of wine. And if he was available, we'd go out for dinner.
mm,
And that taking myself out of being at the hospital where I'd spent all day and sleeping in a real bed without all the noise, I think was one of the things that really helped me through.
mm,
And to find that presence, even if it's a 5-minute meditation.
mhm,
I would also do that. A lot of times I'd get over there and have a Deepak Chopra meditation that was on my phone, and I'd put my headphones in and listen to it.
mm, mm,
Or I'd turn the music on and I'd go walk the halls because they
mm,
had loops that you could walk.
mm.
Self-care, people think self-care is indulgent, and it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's
especially
necessary.
especially when you are providing care to others.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about in the Indigenous wellness studies that I took about helping the helper. And what you said about some of the best doctors being, the ones that are called on the most and often, most susceptible to burnout. It was the same with many of the best elders. And I would watch in a lot of my role as a helper with them, whether I was running the event center or, doing programming, and I ran an Indigenous seniors program for many years, was really being mindful of them and how much they were called on to do things often without much reciprocation and just I feel like the different levels of relationship to consider are so important. And I feel like it's all reflection of our relationship with our creator, however we want to look at that. Right. And many people on their journey are, life is about them. And we've kind of celebrated that in the West, like it's celebrated to be selfish. And I have qualms with that because I feel like we are all interconnected. And when we are, at our best, I believe we are stewards and brothers and sisters of one another. But there's the other extreme of that, which is overgivers who are self-sacrificing to take care. And I think a lot of care providers, like you're saying, whether it's doctors, especially mothers, nurses, people who just they don't take care of themselves, and then the it can lead to situations where the relationships are very unbalanced and there isn't gratitude for the people receiving. It's just expected. Well, my mom takes care of me, my doctor, and that disconnection can really do damage to the family unit, to the community, and then all of a sudden we have a bunch of dysfunction. When really, when we're in flow, we have to have that holistic view that we are as important as those we're serving, and they are as important as us. And I feel like that when we're just in a truly an embodiment of that kind of greater love, like that's when we'll see our world transform to being simple peace. Like peace can't be imposed on human beings. It has to be something from the inside out, right? And just my humble perspective on it. But I feel like when I look at horses in particular, I see them just embodying that level of peace and that level of grace. And I feel like that's such an important reflection for us to see as a possibility for us because so many people don't see it as a possibility and they're just on the hamster wheel in their mind and their to-do lists and their this and all that. So yeah.
Yes. And mm, when we don't take care of ourselves as caregivers, things happen like we get breast cancer.
Mm.
To kind of say, "This, you need to do this." That was kind of a humbling experience.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, this concept we hear it a lot in different iterations, but basically this idea that life is for us to grow through, and it gives us the challenge we need to reflect on where we're at on our journey. So, how did the lesson of breast cancer help you to grow to another level of self-care, Susan?
Well, it certainly put me in a spot where I had to, um, maybe I didn't have to, but my husband, I did most of the driving until it came time and my chemo treatments were 90 miles
Hmm.
from where we lived. And I would usually drive there and he would drive home. And there were, I think, 3 times when he couldn't go with me. And I had to reach out and find someone, and they wanted to help me. People wanted to help me. I just needed to ask.
Hmm.
Um, and that's hard. A lot of times it's hard for the caregivers to know
Hmm.
how to ask for help. Um, right now I'm dealing with, well, my mother who's aging and who lives close to me now, and my son who has seizures. And it has kind of put me back into that caregiving role. Which gives me a huge sense of purpose as well.
Yeah.
And then I get overwhelmed with something and have days like yesterday where I don't get much done.
But that's part of self-care too, right?
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how do you think that you will approach it differently this time, having gone through what you've gone through and bringing more mindfulness and awareness to your needs and taking care of yourself?
I am better at it. I make sure that almost every night, I'm not going to say every night, but almost every night, I spend at least 8 hours in bed. Um, and I'm a good sleeper. I'm not one of those who has trouble going to sleep or wakes up a lot. And, I protect my time. On Tuesdays, actually have a massage therapist who comes to the house and I get a massage.
Nice.
And I protect that time.
Yeah.
I protect the time that I need to do the things I need to do. I protect the time that I usually go over and spend a day with my mother every week. And I protect that time. I've set it on a certain day, and I set up all her appointments if she needs appointments. And it's very protected. And then I sing in a choir, and that time is very protected. That rehearsal time, or I've started going to story slams again. It's like, well, this is what I'm going to do. So I put it on the calendar and try not to schedule over it.
So it sounds
Not
like
going to say I won't.
well, it sounds like you've really learned to prioritize yourself. And I feel like that is what leads to, you know, one thing I've learned about the zone, I also learned this from Tony Robbins, but it's really the Eisenhower matrix, right? This idea that where we're spending our time in life can be divided in four quadrants. Tony Robbins paints it like a bullseye, and I think I prefer the bullseye model. But the idea that a lot of people live in, there's distraction, which is what's not important and what's not urgent, and then there's delusion, which is what is not important, not important and urgent, and then there's what is important and urgent, which is the zone of demand. So when something like your son's having a seizure, that is the demand. But a lot of people will convince themselves that things are demanding, but it's delusional. Like they're not necessarily important. And then the zone, I found interesting that the zone is what's important, but not urgent. And it's easy to put those things off, like getting a massage, like going for a walk, going and spending time with your mother. You can easily put those off and make all the demands of running a business or all this stuff until I feel like a lot of people get to a certain place in their life, and that's where regret comes from because they didn't do the things that they really loved that were important for them, and they sacrificed their own needs and desires to appease others, and it's just part of maybe how the culture has conditioned us to be in a lot of respects. So anyways, all that to say, I appreciate how you've shifted. It sounds like you're in a totally new chapter of your life, Susan. So how do you see your journey evolving now, and what would you like to see grow into?
I would like to see, so one of the things that I would like to do, I said I can have small retreats here.
Yeah.
Right now I have one, I haven't advertised it yet, but I kind of have one set for parents of children, whether they're adults or minors, who have seizures.
Okay. Wonderful.
Caregivers would be another. I
Mm,
mean, these are people who they need some place where they can be heard
hmm.
without feeling judged, and that they know that people understand.
Yeah.
And those kinds of support groups, I don't know, I've never found one.
Mm,
They may be out there,
yeah.
and I've never found one.
And you're creating it, which
And
is
to have the horses that are helping is a bonus.
yeah. I think it's a big bonus, just having access to that that ability to ground in a new way and to be heard, because I mean everyone says, everyone just wants to be heard, but when you can actually realize that you're being heard by such a beautiful and magical animal like a horse, and you're actually being heard by them, I feel like that can be like an uplifting realization for people who do this kind of work with you.
It can. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Susan, I'd love to invite you to our school community, and there are many other care providers and things who we've had on the show, and I would invite you to promote when you do have retreats. You can participate in our community, get to know some people. I mentioned we had Jesse Johnson who was on earlier this month, and he's also working with horses as well. But all that to say, how can people best connect with you who are interested in either a retreat or doing work with the Gestalt therapy with the horses? What's the best way of connecting with you?
Probably through email or my website, which is connectionandsynergy.com. It's my business name, connection and it's all spelled out,
Okay.
synergy.com. Um, I'm also active on Facebook and LinkedIn mostly.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Well, we'll certainly put all those things in our show notes. Before we wrap the conversation, I would love to ask you if you had a megaphone and could talk to everyone, in the whole world all at once, and everyone could hear you, what would you share with people?
Oh my gosh. Hmm. So does a megaphone mean it has to be loud?
It doesn't have to be loud. It's just like if you could whisper to everyone, like a horse, say.
I could whisper to
Yeah.
everyone and have them to calm down and listen.
Mm, wonderful. You're just reminding me there's a woman I met on school. She has something coming up called the Day of Calm. And they're actually, I think they have a similar message. If you're interested, I can connect you with her, but I feel like that's a really profound message. And it leads, I think the power of calm and listening is it's a direct pathway to peace. Um, I don't think we can ever create, like, was it Einstein that says we can't create solutions from the same level of consciousness that we created the problems. So returning to a sense of calm and listening, I think, is two really profound messages. So thank you very much for your presence, for doing what you do, Susan. Um, Before I invite our daughter Luciana to come and thank everyone for listening, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners and our viewers today?
I don't think so. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Um,
our pleasure.
you've had some really nice questions and comments.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the compliments. I find everyone who comes on our show so unique and so interesting, and I really believe that we all have a soulful purpose that we come to Earth to contribute in some way. And I love seeing people who have found what they truly love. A lot of them, like yourself, have gone through some profound challenges to get to that place. But I think it's a really beautiful message you have, and I wish you all the best with the retreats and the continuing expansion of your work, Susan. And let us know if we can be of service in any way. If you want to ever promote what you're doing, I'm happy to help you in that regard.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna invite Luciana up here. You can see a little bit of the snow that we have in Canada. And yeah, with that, I'd just like to wish you and all those you touch many blessings, Susan, and also to all of our listeners and loved ones out there. Blessings to you all. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.
For watching.
Thank watching.
Say have a great day.
Have a great day.
I love you.
I love you.
See you soon.
Soon.
Hey, bye. Macho. Mwah. Woo! Woo! Again, let's spin. Another.